It's not the Democratic way or the highway. It's not the Republican way or the highway. We reach our hands out to the Republicans. We want them to work with us as they didn't do the last 2 years.
Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid wins another term at the top of the Democratic Party, and now he's looking for the road.
The party of change. Top Line begins right now.
Hello and welcome to ABC News Top Line. I'm Rick Klein.
And I'm Jonathan Karl.
Every day at noon Eastern, we're right here bringing you the latest in politics, everything you need to know. Twitter.com/Rick Klein, Twitter.com/John Karl. And John, there is news to report. Breaking news at this hour, sir.
Yeah, before we get to our top lines, breaking news out of the House Ethics Committee. The subcommittee that has been looking into the Charlie Rangel matter has come back and said that Rangel is guilty of 11 of the 13 counts against him. That is Charlie Rangel, guilty of 11 of the 13 ethics counts against him, including the most serious charges that he violated rules on fundraising. So a big blow here to Democrats and to somebody who not long ago, Rick, was one of the most powerful people up here on Capitol Hill.
That's right, and the full matter now goes to the full ethics committee, and they will determine a punishment as we move forward. So, John, what is your first top line, sir?
First top line is Mitch's awakening. As we now know, Mitch McConnell has come out in favor of a moratorium, a ban on earmarks. But this is quite a reversal for McConnell. Not only was he just a week ago defending earmarks, but when he ran for re-election in 2008, he couldn't stop talking about the way he's delivered earmarks for Kentucky. Here's a sampling.
I've secured millions for Northern Kentucky University. I've secured $60 million to promote economic development. I've secured more than $60 million to support Western Kentucky University and millions more for the Transpark and riverfront development. I've worked to secure more than $100 million for the University of Kentucky.
And that, Rick, is how he got reelected.
Indeed, and I guess better late than never. He knew where the votes were on this, and he didn't want a divisive vote early on in his tenure with the new members coming to town. Next up today, not buying. The Congressional Black Caucus is not happy with the leadership deal that Nancy Pelosi has hammered out to avoid a fight for his #2 slot. She is keeping Jim Clyburn, the highest-ranking African-American member of Congress, at the #3 spot in a new position called assistant leader. Some CBCers, of course, not pleased with this. It adds to some tension that actually was exacerbated by the Rangel matter that we just referenced. Among other things, they want meetings with Nancy Pelosi to figure out what this is all about.
And you can kind of see their point here, Rick, because they've created this #3 slot for Clyburn, but they've made it clear that Steny Hoyer doesn't lose any of his responsibilities in the whip role, and neither does John Larson in the conference chairman role. So, you know, it's like he gets a title, but it's not clear what responsibilities he would get. All right, next up, triangulation. President Obama has also come out in favor of the moratorium on earmarks, and this puts him squarely against almost the entire Democratic caucus, both Senate and House up here in Congress. One of the few Democrats who supports earmarks is Claire McCaskill, and she put out an entertaining tweet after she learned that a second Democrat, Mark Udall of Colorado, would support her on this. The tweet that went out from Claire McCaskill read, "Hooray! A D senator swears off earmarks and will vote to ban them. Now there's 2 of us in the D caucus next Congress. Way to go, Mark Udall."
And of course, this is interesting because the Democrats still control the Senate. So they'll be the ones who decide what goes and doesn't go, not the Republicans, despite the vote that they've got today to ban earmarks. And finally today, Dancing with Tea, John Karl's favorite story. Bristol Palin still alive on Dancing with the Stars. And there's a big debate out there as to whether this is all because of the Tea Party crowd. Bristol Palin has been ranking last or near the bottom over and over again via the judges' selections, but then the voters save her. And you can't help but think there's some metaphors here if you're a Palinista.
Rick, I have absolutely nothing to add to Bristol Palin's dancing career, but I am very pleased now to introduce our guest, Lieutenant Colonel Allen West, Congressman-elect from the state of Florida. Thanks a lot for joining us here on Top Line.
Thanks for having me.
You've been in town how many days?
Got in Sunday about 9:30.
Okay, so you've been here a few days now. Are you a Washington insider yet?
I don't think so. I don't think so, and I'm not looking to be. I think one of the critical things, people are looking for a change. I think they're looking for citizen legislators, and I think you saw a rejection of what is that ruling class, elite, or career politician.
And you're one who's come in and said that you will abide by term limits, and you want others that came in this class.
I think it's important. I think that when you go back and you understand that we should be about the business of coming here and legislating, but we should also go home and live under the laws we have helped to create here.
Rick?
Mr. West, I want to ask you, the Republican leadership has tried to own the Tea Party energy and the freshman energy coming in here. John Boehner, Eric Cantor, but these are folks who've been around Washington for a long time. They've taken some votes that you and others have been highly critical of. Do you consider them part of your ranks?
Well, I think one of the things you have to look at is when you have about 80 to 85 new GOP freshmen coming in, that's 1/3 of the House membership. That's a very strong voice, a very strong voting bloc, and I think that we bring a lot to the table. And I think that the current GOP leadership is looking at the ways where they can include us into the decisions and bring us to the table and hear our voices.
Okay, very specifically, there is going to be an election from the freshman class to have a representative in leadership, a liaison.
Absolutely.
Are you going to run for that?
Well, you know, one of the things about being a leader is you sit back and you assess, and if people ask me to be, I would accept that position. But I'm not coming up here to try to throw myself into something. I just want to be a good legislator and take care of the constituents in CD22.
Because right now we know Kristi Noem is running and we know Tim Scott is running.
Yeah.
Do you see yourself supporting one of those two candidates?
Well, I have to sit down and talk to them. We really hadn't had a lot of opportunities as a freshman class to, you know, kind of share insights and perspectives, and that's one of the critical things. I got to assess people before I provide my name.
Okay, not much time to do that.
Yeah.
Mr. West, as you know, a lot of Tea Partiers, yourself included, say this is not a time to compromise on the core principles, on spending and on taxes.
Yeah.
If it comes to it, and you end up with the decision of whether to compromise on some of these things, maybe take some half measures, or face something like a government shutdown, where do you come down? Is it worth standing to the principles, even if it means something like a government shutdown?
I don't think we're going to get toward a government shutdown. I think it's so important that you stand upon your principles, and I think that if you go back and you look at 1994, we don't need to get into that type of a food fight where we shut down government, but there are right and proper principles that promote the long-term sustainable economic growth of this country. And we definitely have to get away from the public sector outpacing the private sector. We've got to reinvigorate our small businesses. We've got to look at that corporate business tax rate, 33 to 35%, and see how we can set the conditions for them to grow and get jobs back here in America.
You spent some 20 years in the military. You
Yes.
served in Afghanistan. You served in Iraq. When we look at cuts, what's your feeling about whether or not that defense budget needs to be pretty dramatically
Well,
cut?
I think the most important thing is we have to look at how we can be successful on the ground in these combat theaters of operation. The 21st century battlefield is a totally different battlefield. We have to get away from occupation, nation-building style warfare. I think that our national security strategy should focus on denying the enemy sanctuary. Cyber warfare is going to become a huge part of this, the information operations aspect of it, and those are the type of things we have to look at.
But isn't nation building and occupation exactly what we're doing with the surge in Afghanistan?
Absolutely, and that was something that I saw when I was a commander in Iraq and when I was also a civilian military advisor in Afghanistan. And I think we've lost focus on the enemy, and we've gotten too far focused on nation building, and that is one of the critical things I want to look at.
So should we be cutting from the defense budget? Should we be looking for cuts from defense?
I think you have to. I think that nothing can be sacrosanct, but I think that it's so important that you have people that have a defense background and understand the situation on the ground to make sure that the cuts that we're doing are the right and proper cuts, and that we're supporting our men and women that are out there on the front lines.
We don't have much time left, but I want to get you on how quickly you see this new Republican leadership taking charge here. I mean, what do you want to see happen immediately? How soon do you want to see, for instance, a vote on repealing the health care bill?
Well, I would say this. In the first 90 to 120 days, you've got to show some positive indicators. Because right now, it was not that the GOP won this election. It was that the American people wanted to have new, fresh faces and vibrant voices and get away from that business as usual. But if they get that indicator that this is going to be the same type of GOP that was kicked out in 2006, then we'll end up on the ash heap. But I think that you'll see some very positive things. I think that you'll see the right goals and objectives, and I think that we'll come forward with the right agenda to get this country back on track.
So 60 to...
Very quickly.
Go ahead, Rick.
Yeah.
I just said very quickly before you go, you had a little bit of a controversy early on, your selection for chief of staff. You ended up withdrawing her name.
It wasn't a controversy. I think that what ended up happening was people on the liberal left in order to try to attack me, they tried to go through Joyce Kaufman. You know, I was going to hire Joyce Kaufman not as a talk radio host, but as a very brilliant political mind. Some of the things that she is able to ascertain and understand. She's been in South Florida politics for 20+ years. But I think that what you're seeing right now is absolutely reprehensible. It's disgusting, the things that are being said about her. And it also shows a duplicitous hypocrisy that I do not want to tolerate.
Okay, Congressman-elect Allen West, thanks for joining us here on Top Line.
Honored.
Look forward to talking to you again.
Thanks a lot.
Rick?